What if I told you one of the most important inventions in human history was created by a teenager? Not a scientist, not a professor, a kid. And the reason he created it is honestly kind of heartbreaking. Because before this invention existed, millions of people lived in a world where reading was nearly impossible. Imagine this. You want to read a book, learn something new, understand the world, but every page is heavy, slow, and frustrating. In the early 1800s, that's exactly what life was like for blind students. Books weren't made of simple dots. They used large, raised letters. Each word had to be traced slowly, one shape at a time. A single page could take minutes. A single book could take forever. Now imagine trying to learn like that every day. Most people couldn't. But one boy refused to accept it. His name was Louis Braille. He grew up in a small village in France in his father's workshop. Leather tools, sharp instruments, the kind of place where curiosity lives everywhere. And Louis was curious, very curious. At just 3 years old, he picked up one of his father's tools. He wanted to try it himself. But the tool slipped, and in an instant, everything changed. He injured his eye. And back then, something like that wasn't just painful. It was dangerous. The infection spread, and within a short time, he lost vision in both eyes. By the age of 5, Louis Braille was completely blind. Now, most people would have seen that as the end of possibility, but not Louis. He was determined. He worked hard, he studied, and eventually he earned a place at one of the first schools for the blind in Paris. This should have been his breakthrough moment, but instead he ran into a frustrating reality. The system they used barely worked. Books were enormous, heavy volumes filled with raised letters. Reading was slow, writing was even worse. Students could barely express themselves. They could barely keep up. Knowledge was there, but just out of reach. And Louis felt that deeply. He wasn't just learning, he was struggling against a system that didn't make sense. And that frustration became something powerful. Because one day, everything changed. Louis was introduced to something unusual. A military invention called night writing. It was designed for soldiers, a way to read messages in complete darkness, without speaking, without light. It used patterns of raised dots, on paper. At first glance, this seemed like the answer. Finally, a system built for touch. But there was a problem. It was incredibly complicated. Too many dots, too many combinations. Even soldiers struggled to learn it. Most gave up, but Louis didn't. Because where others saw confusion, he saw potential. He started experimenting, testing patterns, simplifying shapes, refining the system. Night after night, working by candlelight. And then, at just 15 years old, he cracked it. A simple system. 6 dots, different combinations forming letters, words, language itself. Easy to feel, fast to read, possible to write. For the first time, reading wasn't a struggle. It was fluid, natural, liberating. Louis Braille had just created something revolutionary. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because when he introduced his system, no one believed in it. Teachers rejected it. They thought it was strange, unnecessary, too different from what they already knew. They pushed it aside, ignored it, dismissed it completely. Imagine that. You solve a problem that affects thousands of people, and the people in charge don't want it. But something interesting started happening. The students loved it. They began using it anyway, quietly, privately, almost like a secret language. They could finally read faster. They could finally write their own thoughts. For the first time, they had independence, and that mattered more than approval. The system spread, student to student, not because it was required, but because it worked. But Louis Braille would never truly see the impact of what he created. His health began to fail, and at just 43 years old, he passed away, still believing his system had not been fully accepted, still thinking his work might have been overlooked. But history had other plans, because after his death, everything changed. Teachers began to reconsider. Schools slowly adopted his system. Country by country, language by language, Braille spread. What was once rejected became essential. Today, Braille is used all over the world, in books, on signs, in elevators, on medicine labels. It gives millions of people access to knowledge, independence, and freedom, all from a system created by a teenager who refused to accept that this is just the way it is. And maybe that's the most powerful part of this story. Not just the invention, but the mindset behind it. Because Louis didn't wait for permission. He didn't accept limitations. He saw a problem and believed he could fix it, even when no one else did. So next time you see those small, raised dots, remember this: they are more than a system. They are proof that one idea from one determined teenager can change the world. And if history has taught us anything, it's that the biggest breakthroughs often come from the people no one expects. Follow for more stories you were never taught in school.